Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the Polish Institute of International Affairs. I have a great privilege to welcome Mr. Igor Crnadaka, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina, who accepted our invitation. We are honored to host you here at PISM, and that you choose the PISM for a public speech in Warsaw. This is yet another lecture held by high officials from Western Balkans at our institute. Just a few weeks ago, we hosted the President of Croatia, Madam Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, and now you, Mr. Minister. So I really would expect, this trend and host here very important people from that region. We are pleased to host Mr. Minister here in this very important moment for Bosnia and Herzegovina, less than 1 month after the submission of application for the European Union membership. And we see this act as an opportunity to keep the momentum in order to accelerate the EU integration process in Bosnia. And I really hope that Mr. Minister will share with us your view on this and your ideas how to accelerate the integration process between EU and Bosnia. The accession of Bosnia and Herzegovina to the EU and NATO is significant in the context of security in Europe. It gains yet additional importance in the time of new challenges looming in Europe, and of course in its immediate neighborhood. We see Bosnia as a part of common European project, and we welcome Euro-Atlantic integration as the highest foreign policy priority for this government, your government in Sarajevo. Poland has always supported Bosnia and Herzegovina on its path to the EU and NATO. This is clearly visible in the actions undertaken by different Polish governments, regardless of their political affiliation. And it is also visible here at PISM in our analysis, in which we strongly advocate for acceleration of the Euro-Atlantic integration of Western Balkans, including Bosnia and Herzegovina. So now I would like pass the floor to Mr. Minister and give this opportunity to share with us your vision of the Bosnian and Herzegovina perspective of European integration. Thank you very much, and Mr. Minister, the floor is yours.
Okay, so it's on. Thank you very much for this nice introductory. I must say I was surprised, of course, on the positive side, with the accuracy of the pronunciation of my last name, which is very hard. So Jaroslav Cvijekarpovic, is it close enough? Yes. Okay. I'm glad to hear that you had Mrs. Grabar-Kitarovic here. I would ask for a few advice yesterday if I knew that she was here, because we had a visit of the 3-member presidency and I was part of delegation in Zagreb yesterday and the day before yesterday, but certainly at the very beginning, let me say it is a great privilege to be here at the Polish Institute of International Affairs, and I know that I am today in a very respected and very important institution that has quite a knowledge about what we are about to talk in the next 1 hour, and I'm really pleased to be with this kind of audience that you are here today. I suggest that I make an introduction with basically two groups of positions, one regarding what this means to us in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the other one, what practically we are about to do and what we expect from our friends and partners around Europe, including Poland. And then, of course, the part which is always more interesting, the part where we have the discussion, and I will be here to answer any question. Just that you know, there will be no issues that you should avoid. So please come forward with anything that is interesting for you about the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, our integration process to EU, no matter if I mentioned it or not. So, first of all, I would like to inform you that Bosnia and Herzegovina is at the beginning of the new swing, of the new chapter, very dynamic chapter of its European integration. We were blocked for 7 years. In 2008, we signed the SAA, Stabilization and Association Agreement, and after that, that was signed, initialized, there was no activity of any kind until 2015. So 7 years we were blocked, and of course, you could find reasons for this in Brussels, but most of them were back home, and we understand that very well. However, the spark for the new start were two reasons, two things. One was the new approach by European Union to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the other one was the new Council of Ministers and the new composition of the government in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So what does the new European approach to Bosnia and Herzegovina mean? It means that late 2014 there was an initiative that actually was initialized by our neighbors, Croatians, and with the help of Slovenians. Later this idea was taken over by Brits and Germans, and after it was introduced and well advocated around Europe, it became New European Initiative to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Basically, it changed the priorities. It enabled us to be focused on economic and social reforms, and not to be burdened by very unproductive and very hard, very tough, and I must say useless discussions about constitution and how to change it. Just to make a short remark on this, Bosnia and Herzegovina has a constitution from 1995 when the war was stopped. It's called the Dayton Agreement, the international agreement that stopped the war and opened a big chance for people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And at the same time, this Dayton Accord is consisted, among others, also of the new constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we had a few attempts to improve it, and after 20 years, it took us so much, we realized actually that it's much better to do what we have, to find the solutions, to find compromises, to be more ready for mutual understanding within our system than to look by any reason for a new composition of the constitution. So after that, we had a very, very positive role of our presidency, three-member presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which in some other country it would be the president of the republic or president of the state. We have the three-member presidency. They made the first so-called European statement. After that, it was followed by all parliamentarian parties, so all leaders of the parties in parliament signed this, and it was there were the conditions to start over again, I think I can say so, with the European integration process of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Very important thing is at the very beginning to say that unlike anything else in my country, this European integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina has the huge consensus around the country. So if you go to Sarajevo, which is the capital, or if you go to Banja Luka, which is my hometown, or if you go to Mostar or any other city, you will get big support for this. Parallelly with this, everybody around the country is also similarly unsatisfied with how they lived 20 years after the war. Everybody expected better life, better salaries, more certain, more predictable future for themselves and their children. And now this is something that created a kind of a positive pressure for us in the new government structures. So for us, it's very important, and we certainly want to use as much as possible this great consensus that we have about the European future of the country. We have three constitutional people with their party political representatives, Bosniaks, Croats, Serbs, I think you know, but I'll just say it anyway, that we are a huge mixture. You have people that who practice Islam, you have Catholics, Orthodox, and also a lot of minorities. So all this, it's very hard to find a common position on such an important issue. We have it. Luckily, we want to use it. This is this big support around the country for European integration. So we had, after that, activities by the new Council of Ministers that basically led to a lot of communication with the European Commission, and we came to something that is called a reform agenda, which is basically a document where we have listed all the needed activities that need to be done in 6 different chapters, mostly in economic, social area, and of course area of rule of law, because we are finally demonstrating the clear political will for fight against corruption. And unfortunately, I cannot say that we are speeding up on this, but rather we are just beginning with this, because Bosnia and Herzegovina was probably the only country in the region that did not have not a single case of high-level corruption prosecuted in its courts. And I have to assure you, unfortunately, that it is not because we do not have corruption, but rather because we did not have readiness among the institutions and people dealing with this in the country. So those were the priorities, and most of all we concentrated on the economic issues. We have passed the new labor laws. We have done another changes in the labor legislation, also some changes in tax legislation, and we have come up with a set of issues and set of the legislation that we need to pass by the end of 2018. The most important thing is that after this we had the support of reform agenda again around the country, and we had this document signed by all the party leaders, not only in the ruling structures but also in the opposition. Also, together with this, it's very important to say that Bosnia and Herzegovina, according to its constitution, has a very complex division of the competencies. So it was very important to get everybody on board. And you had some parties that were in government on the entity level. We have 2 important entities that are basically pillars of the country, one being Republika Srpska, another one being Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And you had some parties that were leading in the entity level power, but being in opposition on the state level. So we have very complex internal political structure, but still we managed to have not only all the parties, but also all the governments and all the different levels of the government structure around the country backing up this reform agenda. Why is this so important? Just small information about this. It is that when we looked at the reform agenda when it was over, almost 2/3, more than 60% of all the reform actions that need to be undertaken by 2018 were entity competencies. So that was another proof that it's impossible to lean only on the state level institutions, but rather it was important to look for the compromises with everybody to get a position where we got luckily today with submitting the document of the application for the accession to European Union. So we started with this, and we also started the institutional connecting with the European Union and European Commission. We had the first sessions at the very end of the last year of a parliamentary board of the SAA, with parliamentarians from the European Parliament coming to Sarajevo, and we had the first session of the Council for implementation of the SAA with the EU on the ministerial level, and the chairman of the House of our Council of Ministers, two of his deputies and myself, we went to Brussels for the first meeting with their team headed by Mrs. Mogherini and Mr. Hahn. So that was the new beginning. That was the very good start for us. And also, as one of the results of this was the 2015 country report on Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is one, it's not a joke, but it's an interesting view that usually draws some laughs. But you see, European Union changed the name of these reports that they make for every country. So Bosnia and Herzegovina had no progress in 7 years. And now, first time we had progress in 2015 was the year when they changed the name from progress report to country report. So unfortunately, we had some progress, but it's not the progress report, it's country report. But in this country report, there is certain progress. In this report, European Commission very precisely also told us what are the areas to be focused at with the highest priority in the upcoming time, and that was also the part of these positive events that went one after other. So, like I said, we had kept working on the part of reform agenda. We have passed by today, by 15th of February, when we submitted the application, we have passed around 30% of all the actions that needed to be undertaken on the level of the state institutions, so Council of Ministers, Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and others. We have passed almost half of it. And it's the end of 2018, there is a deadline, so this looked good. And this was, you know that in Brussels they have these beautiful phrases that they use. So this was, as they put it, the meaningful progress of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That was enough for us to come forward with the application for the membership on February 15th. The second part of short-term activities that we have now and short-term priorities is so-called adaptation of our Stabilization Association Agreement, because of the fact that Croatia, in the meantime, became the member of the European Union. And this is also probably a little bit abstract for you here, but just to make it very simple, it is about the foreign trade between Bosnia and Herzegovina and the European Union, and especially with our relations with Croatia. That is a neighboring country with more than 1,000 kilometers of border, and two countries are throughout a very long period of time somehow leaning on each other when it comes to economy and to foreign trade. So we are negotiating at the moment a lot of quotas, a lot of different trade conditions, and it's a very important precondition for us to continue on. Anyway, the process has begun, and the beginning of this process was also one of the conditions for receiving our application for membership. And of course, we had one more condition before our application was accepted. There is also something of a very ugly name, but I will explain it in a few sentences. It's called a mechanism of coordination. This basically means the ability of the country, ability of Bosnia and Herzegovina to come up with a position on anything that is needed to have a position when it comes to dealing with Brussels. In real life, this is the mechanism and the structure of the new bodies that actually process the political and other standpoints in the country and come up with a single position of Bosnia and Herzegovina on anything that is important. And this single position can be communicated then to Brussels and is accepted and respected by all levels of government in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So actually something that is very important, much more for us, and much less it is to be viewed as some kind of Brussels homework. So this is something that should enable us to work on when it comes to the European integration process. With this, I come to the next point. What are the next steps? The next steps for us, of course, is the decision on accepting, not only receiving, but also accepting our application and passing our application to European Commission. After that, those who dealt with some of the enlargement processes know this. Then we will be expecting so-called European Commission questionnaire, with a lot of different, very detailed questions about pretty much everything in the country. This is, of course, a very sensitive moment for us. You have a lot of prejudices around the country from those who are afraid that they will not be able to make in their villages their own beer brandy, to those who are afraid that they will not be able to make this beautiful pork, domestic. When they prepare it over winter, sushi, or when they dry this meat. So you have those very, very simple things to very important institutional things that we will have to answer. Of course, this is why it's important to have this mechanism of coordination so that we can come up with all the answers. And just that you know that we are fully prepared for what's coming, because probably, according to the sessions done so far of the process, we will be facing the biggest questionnaire with the most number of questions in the history of the enlarging of European Union, due to very complex structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Probably we'll be looking at between 4,000 and 5,000 of these questions. So that is what's coming up next, and that is why we have a huge activity in our diplomacy. One of those activities within this is my visit to Poland. It is very important for us to get strong support by Warsaw on all these activities that I was talking about, and I'm glad that today it was confirmed that Poland will be backing us. We do not need any kind of lowering of standards. We do not need any kind of giving us pass through some back door. We just want to be judged and valued through our performance and through what we do. And on this basis, we want support. And I have to say, I feel that throughout the meetings today in Parliament and with my colleague, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, that we have this support. To finish the introduction, then we can move to discussions. Let me say just a few more things about the 4 priorities of the ministry that I'm leading, that I'm heading, because also some of this is very much connected to our relations with Poland, and also to what I'm doing here today in the capital of Poland. So first of all, for us, it's very important to continue the very, very strong regional cooperation. We believe that Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina are they somehow make the triangle of stability and prosperity of this part of Europe, not only due to the very turbulent past that we had there, not only to the fact that we had terrible war there, but rather to the fact that even today the conditions are such that it's very important that in this triangle we have good cooperation. Bosnia and Herzegovina is, first of all, turned to its neighbors. We have very good relations with Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro. We are working on having it even on a higher level. It's one of our priorities of this ministry. On the other hand, as you heard, European integration process, very important for us. And on both of these, the relation with Poland is important. I think that the Visegrad Group, the initiative of the 4 countries, including Poland, is, this is my personal opinion now, just an impression from the last 10 months that I'm at this position. I think it is probably today one of the best articulated regional thoughts and interests in Europe. not only on backing up Western Balkans and Bosnia and Herzegovina, including on European integration process, but also on different other things, such like dealing with the migrant crisis, dealing with different European affairs that are not directly connected to us, who are for now out of Europe, but rather inside. I think it was very good, and we got very strong backing, not only by Poland bilaterally, but also by this initiative. It is said, and we look forward to it, that it will be continued, especially next year, from July 1st, when Poland takes over the chairmanship of this initiative. Third priority for us is so-called economic diplomacy. I know it's not a very popular term, but unfortunately there is no other. That's how we call it. So far, we haven't been very much successful with this, and now we are trying to speed up on this particular part of our diplomacy. Also, together we discussed it with our Polish colleagues, and I hope that we will have the new agreement soon on economy-related issues, that we will have a new agreement on tourism, more Polish people coming to Bosnia, more people from Bosnia and Herzegovina coming to Poland, and much higher foreign trade figures in the upcoming time. And finally, we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are trying, and we think that all that I described so far is part of it. We are trying to get back the better image for the country in general. It's not, unfortunately, only the war that endangered our image. War is 20 years already behind us, but it's also not enough responsibility and accountability by my colleagues, politicians from the country. And I am not afraid to say this. This Council of Ministers that is in position from April last year, we are aware that too many politicians from Bosnia and Herzegovina went to Brussels, to other capitals, making promises that were later not kept, and accepting some deadlines that were later breached. So we want to regain the trust, regain the view of Bosnia and Herzegovina as trustworthy, and that's why it's also one of the important priorities. This is it for the introduction. Please, not only what I mentioned, but anything else you feel interesting about Bosnia and Herzegovina, region, and anything else, I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have more or less half an hour for a Q&A session, and please let me allow just to have a first question to you, Mr. Minister. Definitely Bosnia and Herzegovina and its political system is sui generis example of federalism, which we hardly may find elsewhere. And I think that after Dayton Agreement, no one expected this country can survive with this system without, big problems. And now I would like to ask you, in what extent European integration influences the national unity and statehood? Because you mentioned some examples of problems of public perception, and some people may be afraid of losing their own identity. But on the other hand, we have some examples, for example, in sport, in football, where Bosnia and Herzegovina demonstrates some kind of unity. Okay, so how European integration will influence this process? How you expect being in the European Union as a state and as a in some extent unified state in the future?
Thank you. Do we need this? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's a very good question. It's a very good question, and you made also an introduction to an answer with some of the things you said. First of all, on Monday I was in Cyprus, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs there during our meeting told me about this new concept about unifying Cyprus, finally after, 40 years. And when he explained what it is, I must say it's quite close to what we have in Bosnia. So it's not that nobody else will go the same way. I think we might have some solutions, but it was interesting, of course, to hear this and to share some experiences. Well, you know, I think obviously this is all connected. I think the reason why this kind of a system, very complex system, can succeed is only because only if we manage to really stick to this detailed and precise division of competencies, and that that everybody respects everybody inside the country. So let me come back to this European integration, European Union approach to Bosnia and Herzegovina, the new one. Why am I such an optimist about it? There were many new approaches from EU to Bosnia and Herzegovina in the last 20 years. None succeeded. Why I think this one will? Because for the first time, the entities were recognized and respected, the role of the constitutional people, the integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its territory was confirmed, and this approach is such that everybody is comfortable inside. So nobody can say that in a way they are pushed aside, not even Republika Srpska or Federation, not any of the constitutional people. So everybody has got their role, and everybody has got their responsibility on this road. And that's why I think it is for the first time now really a chance to succeed. So, you know, nobody came and told us, look, if you want to go to Europe, you have to dismiss the entities. Then right away you have Republika Srpska against it. Nobody came and said, look, you cannot move anything on your election law. Croats are very unsatisfied with how it is, and we want to make some adjustments so they would be dissatisfied. We didn't have that. The approach by EU now is such that it's up to us to continue with what we have, to make small adjustments that we can make, and to be focused on economy, on social issues, and on fight against the corruption. So to get back to the very direct question, answer to your question, I don't think that European integration process even has for a goal some imaginative new love for Bosnia and Herzegovina, if I may put it like that. But I think it will raise a responsibility for Bosnia and Herzegovina, accountability, not only among politicians, but also among people. And it is not possible by decree or by any decision by anybody in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not even anybody or institution in Europe, to change the emotions. Yesterday and the day before, like I said, we were in Zagreb. Mrs. President of Croatia, who was here also, the message is clear. We are not going to interfere. We support Bosnia and Herzegovina. We love Croats. That's our people. But we want Bosnia and Herzegovina to succeed as a result of the internal agreement on everything. The same thing you have with Serbia. So this means that there are some emotions between parts and particular people in Bosnia and Herzegovina with, in this case, Croatia and Serbia. And this cannot be changed overnight, only because we are progressing and very fast, for example, to European Union. What does it mean? When Novak Djokovic is playing a match against Federer in the final of Australian Open, you can come to any Republika Srpska city, look at the building, there will be all lights on at 3 in the morning, even though people go to work at 7. They all come and stay late to watch Djokovic, even though he's a, as you know, tennis player from Serbia. When the national team of Serbia plays a football match, you cannot see anybody but cats and dogs on the street. in Banja Luka. When Bosnia and Herzegovina national team plays, it's not that popular to watch it in Banja Luka. But still it doesn't mean we are on the wrong way. Those are things that have to come or not to come by time. And it should not be seen as a priority goal for the integration process. I believe that we will be, which is the most important for me, and I will stop here on this question, we will be with European integration progress, with integrating the country in European family of nations, with raising the living standard, with people finally, as they like to put it, feeling in their pockets, in their wallets, the results of this, for now, imaginative European integration process. When we have all this, we will have people, three different constitutional people being closer to each other within Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it doesn't have to be, and it will not be by any means, against identity of any of those people.
So, do you think that there is a very limited risk that this positive illustration that EU NATO accession of your country would help in your relations with the Republic of Serbia? Do you see any risk that the result can be contrary, that another Western Balkan states closely integrated to Euro-Atlantic community will rather marginalize the Republic of Serbia? What do you think on this? Yeah, I was thinking about Serbia.
I think the Serbia's role in the region is very visible. It's very positive. It's very constructive. Since we are not going to be talking about what happened 20 years ago, I think I can stick to this impression. The same goes for Croatia, which is from a few years ago the only country in the region that is basically in the, if you can call it the region, but they are there. They cannot move. They are our first neighbors and neighbors to Serbia. I think their role is also very constructive, and I don't think that we will see some negativity in these relations in the upcoming time. If you look at the last year or last 2 years, you can see big improvement on the Serbia-Albania relations, for example. You could see the first meetings of Mr. Vučić and Mr. Rama after a long time. Even we had those football matches that are always ones of the high risk, going on quite well. So there is an improvement there. Also, I think that Belgrade-Pristina talks, and especially the results of those talks, are I hope nobody will be offended by this because there were other achievements that were also very good. But it was the biggest, for me, diplomatic achievement in the region in last year. Huge progress was made, and I really do not see anybody that could profit from, like you said, pushing Serbia aside. I think we will see some quite logical, but probably not very visible disputes on who is most important or who is more important or less important in the region. But I think that we are facing a quite good future when it comes to our mutual or relations among the countries in the region. With one addition to this, that we will see how this crisis with migrants will develop, because we saw that the region, but not only region, but also the European Union was quite unready for this when it came. We had very bad rhetorics and very tough wording between some of the countries. Let me remind you that by their statement, Croatia and Hungary, for example, a few months ago, said to be at the lowest level in history between the two countries, in history, in the new history. And for example, we had a situation where the border from Serbia and Croatia was closed for 2 days due to the lack of the understanding when it comes to this refugee crisis. So I hope that this we will overcome in the upcoming months, which will show, I think, how this crisis will be or not will not be resolved. If we put that aside, I think we are facing a period of positive relations in the region.
Yes, our time is very limited. Now I would like to turn to our distinguished audience and encourage you to ask Mr. Minister. If you have some questions, just please raise your hand and say your affiliation. So maybe there's.
Good afternoon, Tomasz Zornaczuk from the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Mr. Minister, you were mentioning the Visegrad Group as a good example of regional cooperation and as a group that supports strongly Bosnia and Herzegovina on its path to the EU. I would like to ask you what specific actions you expect from the Visegrad Group and specifically from Poland as an expression of support of Bosnia and Herzegovina on its path to the EU, except for the verbal support that is been already there for a long time. Thank you.
Okay, so we may collect just 2-3 questions. So, Mr.
Thank you very much, Minister. A very encouraging and optimistic account, if I may say so. Thank you very much for that. I used to be Deputy Director General for Enlargement in the European Commission in the past, so I feel very much with Sarajevo and beyond, with your country in general, and I'm glad to see that you finally managed to start implementing the SAA. Now, soon after doing that, you decided to put in the formal application for membership. What made you decide that? What kinds of momentum do you expect to achieve politically, emotionally inside the country after that decision? Because I would imagine that that must be one of the reasons why you decided to lodge an application. And then the second question would be about the member states of the European Union. I imagine that you are now expected, your country is expected to demonstrate much practical progress before a political decision is made to recognize Bosnia and Herzegovina as a candidate country and before the next stage of the procedure that you elegantly presented is actually there. So I would appreciate you telling us which kind of benchmarks you are now expected to deliver upon, what kind of practical progress and how much of that progress you will need to show before the next stage is in.
Okay, thank you. I think the questions pretty much confirm what I said at the beginning, that we have a very good crowd here today, and thank you for very good questions. First of all, and very specific, very concrete questions, even though they are not always easy, but they are better than those that you cannot even understand all the way. So, what are the specific actions by Poland in supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina? First of all, we expect, and it's very important, to be, maybe it's a too strong a word, but in a way advocating for us to have our application received and accepted and passed to European Commission, which is first next step. Secondly, for us, it is not just a verbal. Support, but you know, when you have somebody in such a process like the European integration process, with process like the enlargement for a specific country like Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's this support, this feeling that you have somebody there who is friendly towards you, it's much more than a verbal support, because you can often view quite differently at what one country performs and to what extent it met the criteria. Like I said before, for the accepting of for the chance to go on to Brussels with this application, we were told we needed to make meaningful progress on reform agenda. So you don't find in any book what does it mean. And because of such things, it's very important to have a friend on this. The same goes for the V4. We have also very good bilateral relations with Slovakia. The foreign minister there used to be a high representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, understands the situation very much. I think he is also not only the country, but he is also the friend of the country, Hungary and Czech Republic as well. So we think that with Poland's and V4 dedication to our efforts, it's much more than the verbal support. And of course, the other part, we didn't have time for everything, of course, today to explain, but the other part why I'm optimistic about the new European approach is the fact that for the first time this political, diplomatic new approach is followed by very clear financial and infrastructural support as well. And maybe for the first time, European Commission prepared the terrain in the right way in discussion with the very important financial institutions. And I think our support on getting some of these projects that are important for us underway, where the decisions are made unanimously, is of the great importance. And of course, we will see if there will be some interesting projects that can help us in bilateral dealing with Poland. That's even better, but I think what I explained for us makes it a very strong support, and it's very important for us. Especially, like I said earlier, we do not want any specific lowering of the criteria or advocating for this, just for supporting our possible good performance, which we hope for. And I think also what you said about what's in front of us regarding the practical things that we want to do next, and which would be the benchmarks. Unfortunately, that's what in that quiz show they call it $1 million question. So unfortunately, we don't have this answer yet, and I think Europe is preparing it. I think they are not ready to give us the benchmarks, probably in order not to make them too stiff, too tough, but also not to make them too low, so that we can meet them in a few weeks. If you ask me about some predictions on this, I would say that we would have to do 3 more things. One is continuing with the meaningful progress on the implementation of agenda, and this would mean probably passing some of the very important legislation that is now in preparation. Second condition will certainly be the end of the adaptation of the SAA due to the Croatia's accession, which Croatia wants very much, and I'm sure that this will have to end as a process in order to get us green light for step forward. And the third condition will be not only establishing of this mechanism of coordination, we have established it now, but the functionality of it in the practice. So they will want to see Bosnia and Herzegovina taking the positions by this mechanism of coordinations, and if it works, it will be meeting of another. I think these are pretty much the conditions, but we haven't heard them yet, not officially, not unofficially, but I think it's going to be around these three that I just mentioned.
I think that we have maybe just a few minutes, so maybe the second round and the last chance for questions. So if someone who would like to say, please.
Hello, Lucina Hovhannisyan, University of Warsaw. I have a question according to the last event which happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina when the National Day of Republika Srpska recognized anti-constitutional. Didn't it bring any tension between nations? Because I know that this year, especially because of this, it was celebrated even in much more better standards and so on. And you mentioned that now there is no tension between these three nations and that there are good relations with Serbia. Don't you think that this will cause tension? Because if like to forbid National Day of Serbia, then it's the follow. It will be like to forbid a commemorative day for Srebrenica, to not insult Serbs in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think it's a really interesting topic. You know, I didn't expect it because I didn't know you were so detailed informed about it. But I'll try to answer this. First, my personal impression. I think that was the I underline personal impression. I think it was I'm 16 years in politics, so Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think it was the stupidest decision made by anybody or any court or any institution in these 16 years. Because it made no gain for anybody, it made no profit for anybody, and it brought tensions in, you just heard what kind of situation and what kind of struggle we who feel we are progress parties are facing. So what we have now, we have the ruling of the Constitutional Court that will not be implemented. And I come from Republika Srpska. I can tell you very directly that I've been part of many of those celebrations. Not at any of them you could see anything that was aimed at Muslims, Bosniaks, or Croats in any negative way. It's the celebration of the day that Republika Srpska began its life, and it was stupid idea to try to tell the people, look, you can have your day, but you cannot have it on January 9th. That was not the day of any kind of massacre, of any kind of tragic situation in the past. It shouldn't be looked at like this. So what we have now is this is 90th decision of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina that is not implemented, and I'm sure that this one will not be implemented because nobody wants to implement it. Then we had some people say, look, how can you be a real country if you have 90 decisions of the 90 rulings of the Constitutional Court not implemented? But we have 47,000 that are implemented. So it's not very easy to make conclusions like that. But this brings us to a very important topic, and that is the fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina has a very, maybe not strong, but very significant presence, international presence in different ways, and until we do not resolve this, we cannot be the members of EU. For example, Office of High Representative with executive powers. This office has the power of dismiss any of elected officials. Luckily, for years it hasn't been practiced, but it's still there. Until we have it out of the Bosnia and Herzegovina system, we cannot move forward. And like that, Constitutional Court in Bosnia and Herzegovina is consisted of 2 judges from every constitutional people. So 2 Croats, 2 Bosniaks, 2 Serbs, plus 3 international judges. And many of those rulings that have not been implemented, one of them being the January 9th ruling, were made by votes of 3 international judges and 2 judges from one people, constitutional people, in this case 2 Bosniaks. So it means that 2 Bosniak judges plus the judge from Moldavia, judge from Macedonia, and judge from Germany overruled the 4 judges from Croat and Serbian people. Of course, it's not that simple, because you cannot view judges of the Constitutional Court just as the representatives of the people. And I'm not naive to think that. But this shows that it is not a good system. It is not a good thing to do. How this thing will develop? There's a few ideas. There is an idea of just passing the law, another law, with just slightly that would just slightly change the name of the legislation, and within this, the January 9th would still be the day of Republika Srpska. There are things to dodge this, but the most important thing is that this is something that didn't bring any benefit to anybody. Luckily for now, if we wouldn't have any complications in the upcoming time, it didn't create a negativity like it could. I think it's not anymore in the middle of political happenings and events in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not in the middle of political fights, let's say like that. So hopefully it will become even more important in the upcoming weeks, and we'll be able to focus on the issues that we talked about today.
No doubt that the compromise is always very difficult to achieve, but it's the only way how we may proceed. I would like to thank you very much for coming to our institute. As you see, and in Poland you may find many people who are really interested in knowing, exploring information and everything about Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I really hope that your first visit, official visit in Poland, would be just the beginning of some new opening in our bilateral relations. I'm not talking only about politicians, but also about expert communities, think tankers, professors, etc. So once again, thank you for coming here, for sharing with us your perspective, for informing us. And now I would like to thank and ask audience to thank also Mr. Minister.